Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
So, my question for today is, why did Moses break the Ten Commandments? Why did Moses break the Ten Commandments? Because the Israelites were not behaving the way that they were supposed to. That's certainly true. But, okay, there's lots of different responses. Okay, so I think one possible answer to that is he got angry, he had a temper, right? His anger got the best of him, and he threw the tablets down. Okay. Anybody else? Why did Moses break the tablets? Good. Good. So maybe Moshe thought they didn't deserve it. Based on what they were doing, maybe Moshe thought they didn't deserve it. Good. Other possibilities for why Moshe broke the Ten Commandments. Let me ask a little bit differently. Why did Moshe break the commandments when he did? Right? As we look at the story, which we can find in Exodus chapter 32, we're going to be reading it today, right? God actually turns to Moses. If you look all the way back on page 531, the Lord spoke to Moses, "Hurry down, for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have acted basely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I enjoined upon them. They had made themselves a molten calf and bowed down low to it." Okay, that's where the first information was given to Moshe when he was up on Mount Sinai. So then Moshe went down, and it isn't until, if you look at verse 15, thereupon Moses turned and went down from the mountain bearing the two tablets of the pact. Unless you're Mel Brooks, then you have three, right? Of course. Bearing the two tablets. And then it says, verse 19, as soon as Moses came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing, and he became raged. One second, Michal. And he hurled the tablets from his hand and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. So clearly anger has something to do here. Michal. Interesting. So Michal is saying, yeah, he took the matter into his own hands here. He didn't wait for God to punish. As a matter of fact, the section we skipped over, God's punishment was going to be a little bit more extreme. God basically says, I'm done. And he was going to wipe out everybody. And Moshe stopped God's rage. And then the ironic thing is, gave in to his own. So it's an ironic piece here. Fred? Please. Are we going to defend Moshe or prosecute? Okay, go ahead. God, and so we're nullifying that. Excellent. And one of our commentators actually goes exactly on that route, saying this relationship was like a marriage contract. And in essence, Israel was unfaithful, and because of that, the contract was then breached, null and void, and it was ripped up. Right? It was ripped up, so to speak. You can't rip up the stone, you break them instead. Good. But let's keep digging into this, because it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that this time gap, right? If if we're just going to talk about rage, which is what it seems to say in verse 19, then why didn't Moshe get angry when God first told him, especially the way God put it? These are your people. You brought them out. They're messing up. Why didn't Moshe at that point in time feel that rage? And it actually is so much of an interesting point that Dvarim Rabbah, the Midrash, picks up on it. It says, Moses descended from the heavens holding the tablet. When he saw, whence that he did not break them until he actually saw it with his own eyes. Right? How do we know that? From the text, and it came to pass, and he approached and he saw. That moment, Moses' anger burned. Said God, the Holy One, blessed be God, be to Moses, didn't you take my word for it that they had made a calf? Right? The Midrash is saying, I told you that's, like, why all of a sudden are you getting mad now and you didn't get mad earlier? Please. I was going to say, we've got a lawyer's perspective, now we've got a therapist's perspective. I like it. Yes. I love it, Becca. So Becca said from a therapist's perspective, often anger is a secondary emotion, right? It's not the primary. It's easier to feel anger than some of the more scary emotions like fear. And actually, I think if you read this text, we can hear the fear in Moshe. God is accusing Moses, saying, your people have messed up. This is your responsibility, right? I can feel the fear there. And then God said, I'm going to wipe them out, and maybe Moshe also had the fear for the people, and that's what he was actually dealing with sort of first, saving the people. And then it isn't until he got down there that secondary emotion of anger was able to come through, and he let it out at that point in time. Good, Michal.
Well, without words, he's kind of like a mediator or a salvager in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
If God was going to kill them, I think Moshe's reaction, to what he did was, in a sense, saving them.
Yes.
And was putting the situation back to a place where it could be dealt with.
Yeah. I mean, Moshe was very much in the middle, right, between God and the people. And he sort of had two different jobs to do. It's one of the things, actually, I remember early on when my wife was the principal of a Hebrew school. She said to me something very, very wise. She said, my job as the principal of the Hebrew school is to protect my teachers from everything and everyone, including the parents, right? But then after I protect them, now I need to go, and when they've made a mistake, I need to educate them. And I need to correct that mistake. And to some degree, that's what Moshe is doing here, right? He's protecting the people from God's anger, which would have wiped them out. And then maybe now he needs to come and he needs to say, there needs to be consequences to the actions that you've done. And here are the consequences. Okay? Anybody else? So our commentators struggle with this a little bit, and they come at it from different perspectives. As I said, one of the answers is that this was a contract, and they have breached this contract. Another piece to it was, or another way that their commentators dealt with it, is they said it wasn't the calf that actually made him angry, right? It was the dancing. Now, what is it about the dancing? It's not, the mixed dancing leads to other things, right? Right? Although, by the way, some of the rabbis say that that's what was going on at that point in time as well, right? The revelry got to a point where it basically devolved into debauchery, okay? But what what I'm trying to find the source here. Oh, this is Sforno. And what Sforno is saying here is that he knew already that the calf was there, but it was the revelry, the joy that the people had in sinning, right? It's one thing to make a mistake. It's another thing to really say, I'm loving doing this, right? And that public versus private, that revelry, that openness, that we don't care anymore, I think was, at least for Sforno, that's what made Moses mad. He knew, because God told him, your people had made a calf. That's not what made him angry. He was going down to deal with that. It's that dancing and that revelry that really got him. So that's one possible response to this. But there are others as well. Somebody said it earlier, and I don't know where, it may have been Michal, I think it was from over here, that maybe he was, maybe he didn't feel that, or that he didn't feel that they deserved it, right? I forgot who said that. Somebody over here said that. And Avote Rabbi Natan actually sort of goes in that direction. It reads, Moses took them, the tablets, and joyfully made his way down the mountain. And as soon as he beheld the abhorrent spectacle of the worship of the calf, he said, how can I give them the commandments? Right? How can I possibly do this? Now, by the way, there's two possible answers or reasons for that. On the one hand, he doesn't deserve them. And another one of our commentators said, wait a second. Until they have these in their hands, yeah, maybe they heard God speaking or whatever, but it's not that hard contract that we have. This contract says very clearly, you shall not worship any other gods before me. If I give this to them, I'm basically making them all sinners. Whereas before, right, if they would have hired Fred as a lawyer, he could have said, well, it wasn't really done yet. Right? Yes, they were talking about it. It was in conversation that they shouldn't have any other gods, right? But they hadn't made that agreement yet. They hadn't signed on the dotted line to say, this is it. But if I give them, Moshe is saying, these tablets, now it's on the dotted line, and now we've got a problem. Now they are, now God is right to kill them. Becca. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right, Becca. Becca's arguing that there's a personal piece to this as well. It's not just about God and it's not just about the commandments. But Moses has literally given up his life for this, right? He would have been very, very happy in Midian as a shepherd, married to Tzipporah. It would have been great. It's a great pastoral sort of life. And God said to him, no, you're going to go back and you're going to deal with all the suffering and all the challenges and face Pharaoh and deal with the 10 plagues and take them out and bring them here. And this is how they repay him. And that personal side of things may be there as well. Good. So one more sort of idea that they bring, and this is sort of the psychological, a little bit aspect of it as well. Yitzhak Arama proposes another view. Perhaps, he says, Moshe saw fit to do it, i.e., drop the tablets, in order to teach them a lesson and shock them. It was literally the shock value of it. I have to do something to break through to these people. I have to do something that is going to get them to listen to me, because they're in the throes of all of this revelry. How am I going to do that? Well, first of all, the fact that he shows up at all is a big deal, because that's why they built it ostensibly to begin with, right? He was gone, and they thought he was never coming back. And so they needed something physical, tangible, to protect themselves, and they built this golden calf. So the fact that he shows up in and of itself, I think, is a shock. But then, here he shows up with the answer to life, the universe, and everything, right? For all of those who are Hitchhiker of the Galaxy fans, right? The answer to life, the universe, and everything. And instead of giving it to them like he's supposed to, he breaks it. Pretty powerful shock value to get them out of what they're doing and make them literally stop cold and turn 180 degrees and go the other way. Marge.
Also, when you get to that level of anger, you're out of your frontal cortex, where it's thought, and you're back to the front part of your brain.
Yeah.
And so maybe the message, too, is what happens when you act in anger.
Look, Moshe definitely has an anger management issue, right? I mean, we know that. He breaks the tablets here. He hits the rock later on instead of speaking to it, right? There's all sorts of moments, and ultimately it's what keeps him out of the land of Israel. So the fact that Moshe loses it a little bit isn't a surprise. He's a human being, and he feels that frustration. And I think, Becca, you really hit it on the head when the anger isn't just from in terms of God and in terms of all that. It's everything he's done for these people, and they can't seem to get their act together to figure it out, right? I mean, imagine for a moment for all of us with all of our theological, philosophical doubts, right? A little burning bush, a little splitting of the Red Sea, hearing God's word that'd be pretty convincing to us, right? Coming from a world where none of that is happening, that we have to still find our way to God, I think to some degree Moshe is saying, like, how much easier can we make this for you? And yet you still can't figure it out.
I think there's also another intermediate step here as well. They say he hurls them. It's a little bit of not really an interpretation, because it says by Yishlach miyado.
Right.
He sent them out of his hands, which is different than the Hebrew word for actually to throw.
To throw, yes.
So he sent them out. But first, he goes to Aaron and he says to him, "How did you let this happen? You know what these people are like."
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of like blames the babysitter. He puts them in his control, and you're like,
I wouldn't hire that babysitter again. That's true, yes.
"What's up with the kids?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, he said, well, I kind of like hedged a bet. Like I thought they would give me in, and then I built this altar. And, I didn't really.
I was stalling. I mean, what?
And the calf came off by himself.
Right.
That's what I'm reading today.
Right.
And this thing just popped out.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, Diana is taking the story a little bit further, and Moshe's response to Aaron and the challenge that Moshe understandably has with Aaron, and Aaron's response to this, and we've talked about Aaron before. Aaron's response to this is the only response that I think Fred could use to get him off would be to say, "I was stalling to try and wait until Moshe came back, because once they saw Moshe, but they were going to kill me, so I had to do something, but I was stalling." Okay. So we've now seen a couple of different possible reasons. I'll give one more reason, which I found very, very interesting, because it teaches not only philosophy about this moment, but actually for further, for all moments. And I'm trying to see who says this here. This is I think it's Meshech HaChochma. It's not cited so well here. But it talks about, it says, "Do not imagine that the temple and the tabernacle are intrinsically holy. Far be it. The Almighty dwells amidst God's children, and if they transgress his covenant, these structures become divested of all of their holiness. Even the tablets, he writes, were not intrinsically holy, but only so on account of you. The moment Israel sinned and transgressed what was written thereon, they became mere brick and brack. I don't know why, that must be a British term, devoid of sanctity. What's he trying to teach here in terms of this? It's a different angle on why it is that the tablets were broken.
The tablets, those things are just objects and symbols. They contain no spirit in of themselves.
Yes.
They don't have a shaman, they don't have a heart, they don't have a connection. They're idols, they're spirits.
Yes, so Neil says that the tablets and those types of items are Torah, right? They do not in and of themselves contain holiness. They become holy, he argues, because of our relationship to them. And if we take our relationship away, they actually lose their sanctity. It's actually a very powerful thing, and it makes us uncomfortable because we look at the Torah and we say, well, the Torah is always holy. And what he's saying here is actually no. The Torah is holy because of our relationship with God and what that Torah represents. But if it weren't for us, if we were to ultimately turn our back on that, then it's no longer a holy object. It loses its sanctity. Diana.
I guess I'm just thinking about this, so forgive me for brain dumping a little bit, but anything that has God's name in it, by virtue of the fact that God's name is there, is holy, right? So you have, when you do something to it today, obviously this is private in Judaism, it goes into like some type of a geniza, where then you officially make it, you take, I guess, you don't actually use that Kedusha.
Yeah. So Diana is arguing, and I think you're correct, but I think this is a modern, Middle Ages modern, understanding of it. That anything that has God's name on it, right, we say has a certain amount of intrinsic holiness, right? We don't just throw away a Siddur. We don't just throw away a Torah. We bury it. If the Siddur is on the ground, we pick it up. We don't leave something on the ground. We kiss it. God forbid, if the Torah is on the ground, we become hungry for a while, right? I mean, we respond to it. But I would argue, while you're correct, I would argue that that's actually a more modern understanding of it. Because clearly, the Ten Commandments had God's name in it. And Moshe dropped it. Right? Moshe dropped it. And I think we've created that, and I think the argument that this source is making is we may have gotten it wrong a little bit, not to dismiss how important the Torah is, but I've always felt uncomfortable. We just did it here. I've always felt uncomfortable for people who don't know anything about Judaism. Right? There are a number of people in this room who are in the basic Judaism class and are very close to converting to Judaism right now. But for those who don't know anything about Judaism, they walk in and they see us carrying this book around and they see us kissing it as it goes by. What do they think? Right? It looks a little idolatrous to me. And we as Jews understand that we're just showing honor to the Torah. We're not worshiping the Torah. We're not saying that is God. But at the same time, we do skirt against that line in terms of the way that we treat it. And I think this source is pushing back on that and saying it's not our objects that are holy. It's our relationship with God that is holy. And these objects represent that. And when that relationship with God is threatened, those objects lose that Kedusha. They lose that Kedusha. We know, we've seen, in synagogues and places where, there's been a busha to the Jewish people, an embarrassment to the Jewish people. It's tough to see that place as a holy place. It's tough, right? And so these places, these objects that we have are imbued with holiness because of our relationship. And when we turn our back on that relationship, those objects lose that Kedusha. And I think as we come back to our Torah portion then, whether it was intentional as a way to shock the people, whether it was unintentional because Moshe, had anger management issues and he couldn't keep hold of his his anger, the dropping of the commandments was representative of the relationship. And what was the response then? What was the response after all of this? He ground it up. And but he didn't throw away the relationship completely, because he took all of that and he put it into the Aron HaKodesh. And then God told him to do what? Go back up and?
Write it himself this time.
Right? Version 2.0, and he had to write it himself. So the first time was, this is a relationship, you don't have to do anything, I'm giving you everything. And God realized, that doesn't work. One-sided relationships don't work. At some point in time, you have to buy in. And it wasn't until the people of Israel bought in, and representative of that, Moshe writing that second set of commandments, that we were able to move on. And it still wasn't easy. They still continued to have problems all the way through the desert. Any last-minute comments before we get to our text?
One thing I'm thinking about, just my last conversation, is that we still refer to Moshe as Moshe Rabbeinu, like our greatest teacher. And I think this whole thing is really just probably one of the biggest teaching moments that there even is about everything we talked about. The relationship, his relationship with God, his relationship with his role as a leader, his role as just him as a human being, and to teach them, like, nothing good is going to come if you act this way. Like,
Right.
you can't have anarchy, and we can't function as Israel if we behave this way. We will have no kedusha at all. And puts me out. Besides that, I'm going to give you another chance. Now I'm going to go up and do it again. It's almost like Pesach Shame. There's always another option. There's time for teshuvah. Go redeem yourself. Now go up, clean yourselves, get ready. We're going to try this again, folks.
So Diana says that Moshe is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher. And this is for sure a teaching moment, right? This is a teaching moment. One of the biggest. And it has ramifications all the way through. I want to say one more thing. My teachers taught in rabbinical school, only ever give one sermon at a time. Don't give two sermons. But I was trying to decide which one I wanted to talk about. And this one I felt was a lot fuller. But there was an idea, something that hit me that I feel in this time, in this place, is something that is really powerful. And that is, perhaps there's a difference between hearing something and seeing something, right? Perhaps when Moshe heard about it from God, he was concerned, he was upset, but it isn't until he saw it with his own eyes, right, that he truly understood the gravity of what was going on. And I will say to you now that I think a lot of us are feeling that in terms of what's going on vis-a-vis us and Israel. And we hear about all of this, and we're upset. But it isn't until you actually go there and you see it that the full impact of it hits you. And I understand Moshe. When we were there in November, so, just over a month after October 7th happened, we had heard about it. We were upset. I was heartbroken. But I remember when I got there and I saw it, my reaction was the same as Moshe's. It was anger. It was anger. And there's a moment when you see something that is so out of the realm of what should be, that I think that natural human response is anger. And maybe that's where Moshe was with this as well. Just something to think about. A last little piece.